Good evening. Vic Prometheus here again. Tonight, I'd like to discuss one of the most influential ideas in human history. Um,
Marriage. Marriage is what brings us together today.
Now, before anyone yells heretic and launches me from a medieval tribute directly into the comment sections, let me clarify. I understand the intended meaning. Unity, commitment, family, partnerships, love. Those are all real things. My problem is not that the idea is obscured. My problem is that nobody can agree where the idea stops. And humanity has had roughly 3,000 years or more or so to figure it out. That is a concerning amount of time. The Greeks looked at love and said, humans were originally whole buildings until Zeus split them apart. The Romans looked at marriage and said, excellent, we shall create 17 legal categories and six tax implications. The medieval scholars wrote libraries, the reformers wrote arguments, the Enlightenment wrote criticism, the internet made a bunch of podcasts. Progress, I guess. Now imagine explaining one flesh to a modern audience. You're now one flesh. Oh, like a team? Sort of. Like Mario and Luigi? Closer. Like a Fortnite duo? Not exactly. Like two Minecraft players sharing a base? Maybe. Like Barbie and Ken sharing a dream house? Warmer. Then what is it? One flesh. And that's the end of the explanation. The theologian leaves. The audience remains. Coincidence multiply. Because every time you ask for clarification, another Bible verse walks into the room. Genesis 2:24 enters. The two shall become one flesh, like I said earlier before. But then, Matthew 19:6 enters. They are no longer two, but one flesh. Right, again. One flesh again. Mark 8:10 enters. One flesh, once again. We are known to see a pattern. And then we go to Ephesians 5:28 and 29. That enters. Husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. Wait a minute. Their own bodies, but they just became one flesh. So why are there not two bodies? There's one. This is getting confusing. Anyway, now we go to 1 Corinthians 7:4. The husband and wife have mutual authority over one another. Okay, and that is because there is one flesh. So how is there authority when there is one flesh? So there is no authority. Okay, we're losing things now. Anyway, and then we go to 1 Timothy 5:8. Provide for your household. Again, this is the one flesh's household. And so we're looking here. So what exactly got marriage? You see, because that's where the trope begins, because every interpretation has another dependency. Share household, share mission, share finance, share authority, share future, share identity. At some point, we're no longer interpreting a marriage, we're installing theological packages. The doctrine started at the simplest digital, now with the Linux distribution. You begin with pseudo-install marriage, simple, elegant, then somebody adds share underscore finances, then share underscore authority, then convental underscore household underscore model, then historical underscore context underscore patch, then Greek underscore grammar underscore extension, then church underscore tradition underscore library, and then maybe you add in like the TradWi framework in there, but like 3 hours later, you're reading a wiki written in 2007 by a man named Theologian42 and wondering why your relationship requires 17 dependencies and 1 or 2 kernel updates. The problem isn't that the doctrine is unclear about unity. The doctrine is even clear about unity. The problem is that it is vague about boundaries. Where does unity stop? Where does individuality begin? Nobody agrees. And whenever somebody asks, the answer is somehow generate stream or podcast. This is why some discussions of one flesh feel like entering the back rooms. You start in Genesis, then someone references Matthew, then Mark, then Ephesians, then the Greek grammar, then Roman household law, then medieval theology, then common in theory, then the property rights, then church history. 3 hours later, once again, you're wandering endless yellow hallways, wondering how a conversation about marriage turned into a debate about metaphysical personhood. And this is where things become suspiciously Cronenberg, not because we're already looking at people literally merging. No, because it's already becoming suspiciously Cronenberg, but because every conversation keeps inching more in that direction. We say we are unified, then we are one household, then we are one life, then we are one mission, then we are one identity, then we are one everything. And you think, oh my god, it's a hive mind. Almost sounds like fascism. That was the joke there. At which point I begin picturing a married couple slowly combining into a tax-paying flesh megazord while a priest assures everyone this is perfectly symbolic and that it's perfectly fine. Some interpretations sound less like Genesis and more like a deleted scene from The Fly, or a originated Fox fight from The Binding of Isaac, or some like truly cringe-worthy written SCP entry, or whatever happens when somebody installs too many Minecraft mods from that one website your mom told you to avoid. At some point, I stopped asking the theological questions and started asking whether the flesh entity had been properly balanced for multiplayer. Meanwhile, reasonable people and non-reasonable people. I mean, you can look at someone like Kim Kardashian, asking, "But who owns the rights to the flesh?" People are going to be asking who owns the intellectual property rights to the flesh. And honestly, that's a more practical question than half of the debates. Then there are the internet debates. A purely innocent parent asks, what does the one flesh mean? Within 5 minutes, 3 denominations disagree, 4 scholars disagree, Reddit disagrees with everyone, somebody cites hero, somebody cites Greek, someone posts a 27-minute YouTube video, somebody compares marriage to Lego, someone compares it to Fight Club, and a man with a Greek statue profile picture types heretic. No explanation, no argument, just heretic, as if he's casting counterspell. The deepest irony is that both extremes are strange. Modern individualism, you own nobody anything, and true interpretations of one flesh sounds like you are now a shared biological startup. Most marriages seem to exist somewhere between those positions. If they even exist at all, because we all know the work keeps going up. But then again, marriage, not complete independence, not a Cronenberg sequel, just two people trying to decide where to eat dinner without accidentally creating a theological crisis. And perhaps that is the true mystery. Alexander conquered empires, Caesar crossed the Rubicon, Napoleon reorganized Europe, humanity landed on the moon. We built the internet, we created Linux, we created Python, we created Fortnite, we created Minecraft, we created the Binding of Isaac, we mapped the back rooms, and we convinced billions of people to carry supercomputers in their pockets. And yet, after thousands of years of Genesis 2:24, Matthew 9:6, and yada yada yada, humanity still cannot answer one simple follow-up question: what exactly got merged? 3,000 years later, nobody agrees. The books multiply, the podcast expand, the common sense is burned, the theologians debate, the Linux users consult argumentation, and somewhere in the distance, a man with a sergeant profile picture, a Punisher banner, a Greek statue, avatar, and traditional values in his bio is typing heretic, as the tradition demands.